always seem to go on. That is beautiful.
There he comes, Sam.
Hey, look, there's Roland.
Hey guys, how you doing?
Hey,
Good.
how are ya?
Good. Hey, glad I finally caught up.
Yeah.
This is spectacularly beautiful, isn't it?
Yeah,
I
it's
mean,
It
an
is so
incredible
beautiful.
place.
This is God's creativity at its very best. This is awesome.
Indeed
It
it
is amazing.
Thank you. Well, this is really, really beautiful. Before we go any further, why don't you guys just introduce yourselves so we know who we're talking to?
Sure. I'm Elizabeth.
Um,
I'm Quentin.
I'm Jaron.
Well, it'll be with you guys. Thanks
Yeah.
for opening up your space for me to be here with you.
Excited to share with you.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I mean, it's staggeringly beautiful. So, what is this called? Where we are?
Yeah.
It's called Blue Spring, and
And what's the local area? What is the locality?
it's near T-Row, but
Okay.
it's just near, not too far from where we live.
So if there wasn't any traffic, it'd be about
45 minutes.
45 minutes,
Yeah.
right? How long
Yeah.
did it take us to get down
Like an
here?
hour and a half.
That's really
Holiday weekend. Right?
It's a little more than that.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's all right.
Well, it's
It's so beautiful.
so. How long have you guys been living in New Zealand? Maybe I'll ask Quentin that. How long have you guys been here?
5 years, almost 6.
Do you remember moving here?
Not really.
Not really. Yeah, because you were a lot younger then. So let's see. If it was 5 years ago, then you would have been 5 years younger.
Mm.
Right. How old were you when you moved here?
3.5.
Right. Wow. So most of your memories have come from New Zealand, right?
Mm.
Yeah, that's very, very cool. So do you guys like living here?
Yeah,
Yeah, there's a lot to love about
Yeah.
living in New Zealand.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, today we were like, oh, let's just go to, this spot near our house. That's
Yeah.
like, one of the top 10 most beautiful places on the planet. No big deal.
Just down the road.
Just down the road.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It is
no, there's
beautiful.
definitely a lot that we love.
So
about living here.
what brought you here?
Yeah, well, we just were pastoring in the U.S. and got a call about coming here and felt like it was the right thing for us. So we pastor a church here and do some other stuff too. But
So was there anything specific about New Zealand in the first place? Oh yeah, let's go to New Zealand.
I think we thought we would always say, what if? Like, we would always wonder, man, what if we had done that? And that we would have more regrets staying and wondering than taking the leap of faith.
Right.
yeah, that's really how it felt. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. So when you arrived in New Zealand, was there anything that stands out in your mind as, wow, this is different from what we're used to?
Accent.
We didn't know any. Yeah, there you go.
What was it?
What did he say
The
about that?
accent. Right. Okay.
Yeah, we did have a hard time
Yeah.
understanding
We didn't know what
people.
anybody was saying half the time.
Yeah, accent and words, like just
Right.
different vocabulary in the first place.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're pretty good now. Every now and then.
Yeah.
Still a few things.
And then honestly, like finding things, either like things were harder to find, or they were more expensive, or they were called something different. So this happened at the grocery store and at the hardware store, things like that.
Okay. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there was a big learning curve,
Yeah.
especially in those places.
So you went and asked for a wrench, and they said, "What are you talking about?"
Yeah.
I went to the hardware store with one of our friends from the UK, and I had a word for the tool I needed. He had a word for the tool he needed, and the Kiwi guy had a different word. And there's two words in each thing, but when we all together figured out what we needed, it's kind of crazy.
Translating the English language.
Took a lot of us.
Yeah.
That is cool. That is cool. So how have you found getting on with the people here? Are they easy people to get to know?
Yeah, it's really been. Are you off?
All right, fair enough.
It's been really easy. It's great for us. We live in a neighborhood that we love, and getting along with people has been really great. We live in a neighborhood we love with lots and lots of kids. It's one block away from Clinton's school, and we're able to just build a lot of community and have a lot of relationships that way. I think that type of thing helped us feel settled fairly easily.
Yeah, lots of great people in the neighborhood. Clinton School is just a little walk away, so we went to school every morning. Don't have to get out of the car. Church is just really close too, so our whole life is in one little area.
Yeah,
at
it's
least in
about
Hamilton.
a 1 kilometer kind of radius are kind of the majority, probably 85% of our life.
Right.
I love that
Wow.
kind of community.
It's like a village, yeah.
Yeah, kind of.
Yeah,
sense,
that's
yeah.
awesome. That's awesome. So listen, statistically, New Zealand doesn't score high on the faith index. It's not a place that's renowned as this is a people that are profoundly committed to their faith. There's a lot of faith in New Zealand, a lot of diverse faith perspectives, but overall, not listed as one of the countries that are profoundly recognised as a country built in the faith environment. So why would you come to a place where that's the case? Wouldn't it be easy to stay in a place and where people are responsive or immediately accessible when you talk about the stuff, people know what you're talking about? Wouldn't that be easier?
There's some things about that to be easier. But at the same time, when you come to a place like this, you get to be a part of the community and a part of people's lives.
Right.
And have to trust that God's at work.
Right.
Even in the places that we don't always see. So, and there's a lot of blessings in those relationships as well. So we've had a good time.
Yeah.
So if your primary concern is growing a large church quickly, or kind of statistical measures, this would not be the place to come for that.
Right.
However, God is at work everywhere in the world.
Right.
And if only we have eyes to see it, and if only we're willing to participate in that. And it's not always in a statistical mode. That these are real people that God loves and sees, and so our job is to show up here and be present in that and point out the ways that God is already at work.
Right.
Yeah, see the ways that God's at work.
Right. And get along with them.
Be able to see that God's working even in these little ways, little interactions, little conversations, just life with people.
Is that so many people think about God in terms of cognitions and statistical representations and doing God's will, that God says this is what you have to do and they've got to do it because God said it. It's coming to that space that is ultimately relational, that finding the relationship is finding God, and that as you live in those relationships with people and you become representation of faith, then that is the faith journey. That it's not about making people think the same way. It's about living life with people in a way that embraces them and reflects the core values that you have. So, one word answer: what's at the center of the motivation of all of that?
Certainly love.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what drives that, and what is compelling.
Yeah. So if you're living in the community and you're speaking love into the community as reflective of the love that God has for us, can you think of a story offhand that would represent how that worked?
Yeah, we actually had a story fairly recently. So Quentin mentioned we've lived here for 5.5 years, and then I mentioned that we live in a community with lots of kids and quite close-knit in a lot of ways. A lot of our kids go to the same school. A lot of our kids play on the same soccer team. Like, this is our neighborhood. And one of the families in our community is Indian. Their family lives in India. They've immigrated here. And recently, the mother of this family, her dad died of COVID in India.
Wow.
And obviously, here in New Zealand, we can't travel there. She can't go be with her family. Wow. The COVID outbreak was horrible at that point in India. And I just reached out to my other neighbors in the community who are predominantly, let's say, secular humanists, like not a context of even how do we respond in grief. And I said, hey, friends, let's begin by providing some meals. Let's care for our friend. Let's rally around her and help her know that she's not alone.
So wait, just let me pause to clarify. You didn't get your church people to do this.
No,
you were working with the
community
community
people.
that you're actually living
those are
in.
our
All right,
neighborhood,
cool.
our friends.
Cool.
Yeah,
That's cool.
So and they were all like, oh yeah, we just had no idea where to even begin. But they rallied around her, and everybody said, I've got this night, I've got this night, I've got this night, and packed them full of food for starters. And every person that showed up at her door, our friend said, everybody said, just remember you are not alone.
Wow.
Just remember we are here with you.
Wow.
And so then as her family said, okay, we need to do something. And she said, I want to have a remembrance for my dad. And so I was over just chatting to her, and she said, Elizabeth, can you help me plan a remembrance? And I said, sure. We actually frequently do remembrances for people who have died overseas, whose
It's
loved
pretty
ones
common
live
in our
here.
congregation for that.
Because
That's happened,
because we have a
yeah,
lot of
multiple
immigrant
times.
people as a part of our congregation. So this is actually something that we do fairly frequently.
Right.
The deceased person lives in another country. We want to honor their life here,
Mhm.
even though no one else here knows them.
Right.
And so I said, yeah, this is something we can definitely do. And as the conversation evolved, she said, well, my family in India is going to join online via Zoom. And Jaron made that possible. And she said, my sister in the U.S. is going to join online via Zoom. And she said, Elizabeth, I'd just like you to do what you do. Like, do some prayers, however you do that. And our neighbor's Hindu. Her family is Hindu. And so I wanted to be really respectful of that, but invite them into a space where they truly experienced love and had space to grieve this beloved child of God and this father, this grandfather. So I said, it sounds like there are a lot of people from our community that would want to be a part of this. Would you like to do this at the church? And she said, you would be willing to have it there?
Oh, wow.
I said, yeah. And so my neighbors, these same neighbors, they showed up, and her work colleagues showed up. And then actually at that point, a few people from our church came to help just serve in the kitchen.
Right.
Just to help make sure the food was set out and the coffee and tea were ready. And we had, in essence, a funeral for this man that I have never met, who died, I don't know, 10,000 miles away or something. I don't even know how far that is. And in that, not only did our friend and neighbor feel loved, but her family that is so far away felt loved and cared for. And at the end of that, they said, I don't think we're going to need to have another funeral when everybody can travel here again. We have remembered our dad and husband's life well. And I think that is love in action.
Yeah.
It says, here's how we can
Offer what we have.
Here's how we can offer what we have and really invite others to participate in that, even if they don't yet have a name for it.
Right. And even when you think about it, even the church building itself then becomes not a place where people do activity of church and talk about things that they believe to be true, but it's actually a space in the community where the community is being served and valued and loved. So that's a beautiful story.
You hit on something really important there that we think is really important. We see our church space, which is the building, property, all that sort of thing. All of that we see as something that we have to resource our community with. Like, how can we provide space for things? So, for example, we have a basketball court we put in that is just on the side, and it gets consistent use throughout the week. Hundreds and hundreds of people a week are using that place. And they just know. We put signs up that say, hey, we're glad you're here, and come play. And things like we're trying to plant a community orchard, things that say to our community, hey, we're just here to serve you, and this is what our space is for. And so this is another example of doing that.
And here's a really key thing that you share with me before, Jaron. This isn't about how a trap that we use to get people to start coming to the church or to think the way that we think, right? This is the heart here is actually love.
We have this space. We should provide it as a resource to our community. And that's how the love of Christ shows up.
Exactly.
And then people respond to that in different ways, and God works through that. But the reality is we're just there for relationship and to care for them.
It's love manifested in hospitality. And it's
love in action.
hospitality of heart and life and
beautiful.
space. And that's how that plays out.
And in walking in that space, we're kind of reminded of who God actually is. Even as we're walking along here, and you showed us that little tiny flower, and you made the comment that even God cares about that little tiny. He was creative enough to get down to that little level and allow that to come into being. And it's a beautiful way of thinking about God. But that walk then reveals a God who is love, who is embrace, who is present, rather than one that is demanding, that is, you've got to think a certain way, you've got to act a certain way. We do think certain ways and we do act certain, but those are products of the walk with God. They aren't products of a contrived and forced perspective. And that kind of leads me then, because how you've said that is terrific, but we've all been around long enough within that environment, that church space. Sometimes the stories that are told in that church space says if you're not seeing lots of people believe the cognitions, that you're not actually doing what you're supposed to be doing. You're not actually. So your story then is a is a disformed story. It's a broken story. You want to respond to that idea for me for a moment?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that we believe in as, Wesleyans is that is in prevenient grace.
Right.
That God is always at work. And so I think sometimes in the church we get in a hurry.
Yeah.
So we try to push what God is doing. And so when we focus on statistics and numbers and all those sorts of things, what God is really calling us to is to be available and to be in relationship with people, knowing that as we do that, God is at work.
Right.
So it really comes down to our ability to trust
Right.
that God is at work
Right.
in those places.
Yeah,
and
that's
so
right.
as we trust God and we say, hey, you know what, God, this is yours. We're here offering this. We trust you with these people. We trust you with ourselves.
Yeah.
And we believe that as we love and care for people over time,
Yeah.
these people will come to be a part of our community. And we don't set up barriers for how they get in.
Yeah.
You're in.
Right.
You get to come to be a
Right.
part of this community
Right.
of people.
Which is
And-
reflecting that story, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then over that time, eventually God just kind of draws people in.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we have
And
many
here's the thing.
many people in our congregation.
Even if our
that
neighbors
yeah.
never come
Yeah,
to be
they
part
never
of our
come.
local church, what they are experiencing is God's grace
God's
at
grace,
work in
yeah.
their lives.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
And God will be at work, was at work in their lives long before we moved here.
Mhm.
And honestly, will be at work in their lives long after we have relationship with them, however that looks. And we can trust that that God's hope and desire and restorative work for them is far greater than anything we could even
Yeah.
contrive or imagine.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, that's perfect. That's
Well,
perfect.
even from the funeral, one of the great things about the funeral that we had was people stayed around for several hours afterwards, which is not always the case at funerals. Just chatting and spending time together, and we had lots of conversations with different people,
Yeah.
and even that kind of just being available in that way offered grace to them.
Yeah.
So talking about their experiences with funerals, things that they hope to have experienced, and maybe haven't before.
Yeah.
And so we just, hey, look, we love you. This is who God, we believe that God loves us enough just to be in this place.
Yeah.
So there's no expectation. We just want you to be a part of our life. We want to be a part of your life, however it
And
works.
this happened 5.5 years after moving to this neighborhood. 5.5 years of like block parties and
Right.
soccer and
Right.
school. So we're talking like long view of relationship,
Yes. Right.
long view of investing and making ourselves available, that our friend at our time
Right.
of greatest need would feel like this is a safe place
Yeah.
to be vulnerable and to trust.
That came out of a relationship.
That is so perfect, because it's so easy. If our perspective is built upon cognitions, belief structures, arguments, debates, then you want to see response to that quickly, because what you're actually looking for is validation of your
Right.
position. But where you see faith as a relational grace love journey, then the long arc is actually the right arc.
Right.
And
Sure.
being able to walk with people over a long period of time and see that process unfolding for them, it just has so much legitimacy, doesn't it? It feels right for us, even as we take this journey. There's this sense of this is pleasing to God. This is how God works, and it's the way He's worked in creation for millions of years, and just present in the whole process, and we get to see the product of that here.
Yeah, I think in the same way, I was just going to say this particular space for me is an articulation of God's
Right.
invitation to
Right,
us.
right.
It invites us, I feel like, when I come here, like the veil between heaven and earth is
Right,
very thin.
right.
And it invites us into that
Yep.
relationship and just stillness
Yeah,
of spirit.
sure.
And
Yeah.
so it's a tangible example
Yep.
of that.
Yep. Well, that's perfect. Well, thank you so much for bringing me down here and showing me this incredibly beautiful place. That the water, is so crystal clear, and we're able to see the sign. I think I'll put some of it on the video where it says it's actually the process of seeping up through the rocks over 100 years that
Yeah.
clears out all this stuff, so it becomes this blue, beautiful thing. And it's just such a wonderful, wonderful space in. So thanks for bringing me here.
Okay.